The crimson sun hung low over the dusty plains of Texas, casting long shadows across the town of Redemption Creek as Olivia Vaughn stepped off the stagecoach, her face hidden beneath the wide brim of her worn hat. The year was 1875, and like many before her, she had come west seeking a fresh start. Unlike most, however, she carried more than just luggage. She carried secrets etched permanently into her skin. Redemption Creek looked like any other frontier town, a single main street lined with wooden buildings, the inevitable saloon with its piano music spilling onto the street, a general store, and a small church standing sentinel at the far end. Olivia adjusted her high-necked blouse and long skirt, ensuring every inch of her scarred skin remained covered despite the blistering summer heat. "First time in Redemption Creek, miss?" the stagecoach driver asked, handing down her single trunk. "Yes," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "I'm here to work at the schoolhouse." The driver nodded. "Schoolmarm position's been vacant since Miss Holcomb left for Denver last spring. Town's been waiting on someone with proper education." Olivia thanked him and paid the fare, gathering her modest possessions. At 26, she'd spent the last several years teaching in Boston until circumstances, painful ones, forced her westward. Here, where no one knew her name or her past, she hoped to find peace. As she made her way toward the boarding house, the sound of hoofbeats made her turn. A tall man on horseback approached, his strong profile silhouetted against the setting sun. He guided his horse with ease, one hand resting on his thigh while the other held the reins loosely. His eyes, clear and blue as a mountain spring, met hers briefly before tipping his hat in greeting. "Evening, madam," he said, voice deep and tinged with a distinctive drawl. "You must be the new teacher." Olivia nodded, surprised. "Word travels fast." A smile crossed his weathered face, revealing dimples beneath several days' growth of beard. "Not much happens in Redemption Creek that folks don't know about before sundown." "Owen Parker," he introduced himself. "I run the cattle operation north of town." "Olivia Vaughn," she replied, offering a gloved hand which he took gently. "Need help with that trunk, Miss Vaughn?" he asked, already dismounting from his chestnut stallion. "Thank you, Mr. Parker, but I can manage." He chuckled, picking up the trunk anyway. "I've no doubt you can, but my mother would haunt me from the grave if I let a lady struggle while I sat on horseback." Olivia reluctantly surrendered her trunk, noting the easy strength with which he hoisted it. Owen Parker stood over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and lean-hipped, in the way of men who worked outdoors their entire lives. His clothes were practical worn boots, denim trousers, a cotton shirt rolled at the sleeves, revealing sun-bronzed forearms, but clean and well-maintained. Unlike many men she'd encountered in town already, his eyes never wandered inappropriately. "Mrs. Jenkins runs the boarding house," he explained as they walked, leading his horse by the reins. "Best cook in the county and keeps the cleanest rooms this side of the Mississippi." "You seem to know everyone in town," Olivia observed. "Born and raised here," he confirmed, "except for the war years." She detected a shadow cross his face at the mention of the war, still a fresh wound for many even a decade after its end. "You fought?" "Fifth Texas Cavalry," he said simply, offering no further details. "The school's just down that way. Small building, but solid. The children are good kids mostly, though some of the boys might test you at first." They arrived at the boarding house, a 2-story white clapboard building with a wide porch. Owen carried her trunk up the steps and set it down gently. "Thank you, Mr. Parker." "Owen, please," he insisted with another tip of his hat. "Welcome to Redemption Creek, Miss Vaughn. I expect we'll be seeing more of each other." With that, he mounted his horse in one fluid motion and rode away, leaving Olivia standing on the porch with an unexpected flutter in her chest that she quickly suppressed. She hadn't come west for romance. She'd come to escape, to heal, to forget. Men like Owen Parker were dangerous not because they might harm her physically, but because they might make her want things she couldn't have. Mrs. Jenkins proved to be exactly as Owen had described, efficient, friendly, and discreetly curious about the new schoolteacher. Olivia's room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window overlooking the main street. After unpacking her few belongings, she removed her traveling clothes with relief, carefully folding each garment, Standing in her chemise before the small mirror, Olivia forced herself to look at what she usually kept hidden. Angry red lines crisscrossed her upper arms and shoulders, while circular burn scars dotted her forearms. Across her collarbone ran the worst scar, a jagged, ropey reminder of the night she'd nearly died. She traced it with trembling fingers, remembering the pain, the fear, and the strength it had taken to survive. Never again, she whispered to her reflection, a promise she'd made years ago. Olivia rose early the next morning, eager to see the schoolhouse before meeting her students the following day. The town was already stirring, shopkeepers opening their doors, workers heading to their jobs, and women hanging laundry on lines strung between buildings. She nodded politely to those who greeted her, aware of the curious glances. New faces were rare enough in Redemption Creek, and a single woman even more so. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple one-room building with a small bell tower. Pulling the key she'd been given from her reticule, Olivia unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. 8 rows of benches faced a teacher's desk on a raised platform. A large slate board hung on the wall behind it. Olivia ran her hand along the smooth wood of the desk, picturing the children who would soon fill this space. This would be her domain, her sanctuary. Here, she could focus on shaping young minds rather than dwelling on her past. "What do you think?" a voice asked from the doorway. She turned to find Owen leaning against the doorframe, hat in hand. In the morning light, she noticed flecks of gray at his temples that hadn't been visible the evening before. He was older than she'd initially thought, perhaps in his mid-30s. "It's perfect," she replied honestly, "though it could use a good cleaning." "That's why I'm here," he said, stepping inside. "Town council asked me to make sure everything was ready for you. I've got some boys bringing fresh water, and the ladies from the church are bringing cleaning supplies." "The town council sent the largest cattle rancher in the area to clean a schoolhouse?" Olivia asked skeptically. Owen's laugh was warm and genuine. "I'm the council chairman, but don't worry, I'm not above scrubbing floors." True to his word, he removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and spent the morning helping Olivia prepare the schoolhouse. They worked well together, falling into an easy rhythm. He reached the high corners she couldn't, moved the heavier benches, and repaired a broken window latch, all while maintaining a respectful distance that Olivia appreciated. By midday, several women from town had arrived with sandwiches and lemonade. They introduced themselves as the mothers of future students, each sizing up the new teacher with varying degrees of subtlety. "We're so grateful to have someone with proper Eastern education," said Mrs. Collins, whose twin boys would be in Olivia's class. "Our children deserve more than just the basics. Though we hope you're not too delicate for frontier life," added Mrs. Abernathy, a no-nonsense woman with calloused hands. "Winters are harsh here, and the children come whether there's snow or not." "I assure you, I'm more resilient than I appear," Olivia replied evenly. Owen, who had been fixing a loose floorboard, looked up at that moment, his eyes meeting hers with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "I believe that," he said quietly before returning to his task. The following weeks fell into a pattern. Olivia taught during the days, gradually earning the respect of both her students and their parents. The children, ranging from 6 to 16, were eager to learn despite their varying levels of previous education. She introduced literature, geography, and science beyond the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic they'd been taught before. She saw Owen occasionally at church on Sundays, in town when he came for supplies, or when he dropped off his foreman's children at school. Each time he was unfailingly polite, never pressing for more than casual conversation. Yet Olivia found herself increasingly aware of his presence. One afternoon in late October, as autumn painted the surrounding countryside in the gold and crimson, Olivia dismissed her class early. A storm was brewing, dark clouds gathering on the horizon, and she wanted the children safely home before it hit. She was gathering papers when the first raindrops began to fall, quickly building to a downpour that drummed against the schoolhouse roof. Sighing, she resigned herself to getting wet on the walk back to town when the door burst open. Owen stood there, rain dripping from his hat and coat. "Thought you might need a ride," he said, gesturing to where his horse waited under the shelter of a nearby tree. "Thank you, but I couldn't possibly—" "Miss Vaughn," he interrupted gently. "It's pouring. The The temperature's dropping, and it's nearly a mile to town. Please allow me to help." Reluctantly, Olivia agreed. Owen helped her into her coat and held it over her head as they dashed to his horse. With practiced ease, he mounted first and then reached down, lifting her onto the saddle in front of him. One arm secured her, while the other held the reins. The closeness was alarming. Olivia sat rigidly, acutely aware of his chest against her back, his breath warm against her ear, despite the cold rain. They rode in silence until reaching the boarding house, where Owen dismounted first and then lifted her down, his hands strong and steady at her waist. "Thank you," she managed, stepping away quickly. "My pleasure," he replied, rain streaming down his face. "Though I should apologize for getting you wet despite my best efforts." Olivia looked down at herself, realizing her blouse was soaked enough to cling to her skin. Panic rose in her throat. Could he see the outlines of her scars through the wet fabric? She crossed her arms protectively over her chest, backing toward the door. "Miss Vaughn," Owen said softly, concern evident in his voice. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she lied. "Just cold. Good day, Mr. Parker." She fled inside, hurrying to her room, where she changed into dry clothes with trembling hands. Had he seen? Would he ask questions she wasn't prepared to answer? The thought of anyone discovering her scars filled her with dread. They were more than just physical marks, they were the visible evidence of her shame, her failure to protect herself. Over the next several days, Olivia avoided Owen as much as possible, making excuses to leave whenever he entered a room, and taking roundabout routes to avoid passing his ranch on her weekend walks. If he noticed her behavior, he was gentleman enough not to mention it. November brought the first real cold snap, and with it, preparations for Thanksgiving. Mrs. Jenkins informed Olivia that the entire town gathered for a communal feast at the church, and her attendance was expected. The prospect of socializing with the entire community was daunting, but Olivia knew refusing would only invite more questions. The day of the celebration arrived clear and crisp. Olivia wore her best dress, a deep green wool with high neck and long sleeves that concealed every inch of her scarred skin. She'd pinned her dark hair up loosely, allowing a few curls to frame her face. Mrs. Jenkins had assured her she looked lovely, though Olivia knew no amount of fine clothing could make her truly beautiful again. The church was transformed with tables laden with food, harvest decorations, and lanterns casting a warm glow. Children ran between adults, excitement making them louder than usual. Olivia accepted a plate and moved through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries with parents and students. "Miss Vaughn," came the now familiar voice behind her. "You look lovely today." She turned to find Owen, cleanly shaven and dressed in his Sunday best, a plate of food in one hand. In the lamplight, the lines around his eyes seemed more pronounced, evidence of years squinting against the Texas sun. "Thank you, Mr. Parker," she replied formally. "Your ranch hands mentioned you've been busy with the autumn roundup. I trust it went well." "Well enough," he said, "though I'd prefer talking about something other than cattle. Would you care to join me?" He gestured to an empty table near the window. Against her better judgment, Olivia followed him. They ate in companionable silence for a few moments before Owen spoke again. "I get the feeling you've been avoiding me, Miss Vaughn." Direct and forthright, she should have expected nothing less. "I've been busy with school," she offered weakly. Owen studied her, blue eyes seeing more than she wanted them to. "Have I offended you in some way?" "No," she said quickly. "Not at all." "Then why do you look at me like I'm about to draw a weapon whenever we're alone?" The question, asked gently but directly, caught her off guard. "I don't—" "You do," he insisted, "and I'd like to understand why." Olivia set down her fork, gathering her thoughts. "Mr. Parker." "Owen," he corrected automatically. "Owen," she conceded. "I came west for a fresh start. I'm not looking for complications." "Am I a complication?" he asked, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Men usually are," she replied before she could stop herself. His smile faded, replaced by something more serious. "Someone hurt you," he said. It wasn't a question. Olivia felt exposed, as though he could somehow see through her clothing to the scars beneath. "My past is my own," she said firmly, "and I prefer to leave it where it belongs behind me." Owen nodded slowly. "Fair enough, but if you ever want to talk about it, I'm a good listener." Before she could respond, they were interrupted by the mayor calling for everyone's attention to give a Thanksgiving blessing. Olivia used the opportunity to slip away, making her excuses to Mrs. Jenkins before walking back to the boarding house alone. Winter descended on Redemption Creek with a vengeance, bringing biting cold and heavy snow. School continued despite the weather, though attendance dropped on the worst days. Olivia added extra reading and arithmetic drills to keep the children occupied indoors during freezing recesses. A week before Christmas, a blizzard struck without warning. Olivia had just dismissed her students when the storm hit full force, visibility dropping to mere feet. She was closing up the schoolhouse when the door burst open, revealing Owen, covered in snow, his face red from the cold. "The Miller children never made it home," he said without preamble. "I'm organizing search parties." Olivia's heart sank. The Millers lived on a small homestead 3 miles out of town. Their children Emma, age 8, and Jacob, age 6, had left the schoolhouse less than an hour ago. "They were heading straight home," she said, already reaching for her coat. "Emma knows the way." "In this weather, even adults get disoriented," Owen replied grimly. "We've got to find them before nightfall, or they won't survive the cold." Olivia grabbed a lantern. "I'm coming with you." Owen opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it. "Stay close to me," was all he said. They rode double on his horse, the animal struggling through drifts that reached its chest in places. Owen shouted the children's names into the howling wind, while Olivia held the lantern high, its weak light barely penetrating the swirling snow. After an hour of searching, with daylight fading fast, Olivia spotted something, a splash of color, against the white. "There," she shouted, pointing. It was Emma's red scarf, caught on a fence post. Owen immediately dismounted, helping Olivia down. They found small footprints, nearly filled with fresh snow, leading toward a stand of trees. "They were trying to find shelter," Owen said, following the tracks. They found the children huddled under a fallen tree, Jacob unconscious in his sister's arms. Emma looked up with tear-frozen cheeks as the lantern light reached them. "Miss Vaughn," she whispered, voice weak. "I tried to keep him warm." "You did wonderfully," Olivia assured her, already removing her own coat to wrap around the little boy. "Mr. Parker is going to take you both home now." Owen carried Jacob while Olivia helped Emma to the horse. The ride back to town was tense and silent, all of them pressed together for warmth. By the time they reached the doctor's house, Olivia couldn't feel her fingers or toes, and her lips had turned blue with cold. The next few hours passed in a blur. The doctor attended to the children, while Mrs. Jenkins forced Olivia into a hot bath, fretting over her reckless disregard for her own safety. It wasn't until later, sitting wrapped in blankets by the fireplace in the boarding house parlor, that Olivia realized she'd been so concerned for the children that she hadn't worried about her scars being seen. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Jenkins answered it, returning moments later with Owen. He'd changed clothes and looked warmer, though fatigue lined his face. "The children?" Olivia asked immediately. "They'll be fine," he assured her, accepting the cup of coffee Mrs. Jenkins offered. "Jacob has some frostbite on his toes, but the doctor says he'll keep them." Emma was more frightened than hurt. He looked at Olivia with unmistakable admiration. "Thanks to you, they were found in time." "I only saw the scarf," she demurred. "You organized the search parties." "You insisted on coming despite the danger," Owen countered. "Most women would have stayed safely indoors." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "I'm not most women." "No," he agreed quietly. "You certainly are not." Something shifted between them that evening, a new understanding, perhaps, or a mutual respect. Whatever it was, Olivia found herself no longer avoiding Owen's company in the weeks that followed. They weren't exactly friends, but there was a comfort in his presence she hadn't expected. Christmas came and went, with the town celebrating together again. Olivia received small gifts from her students' handmade bookmarks, a jar of preserves, a hand-carved wooden apple. The most surprising gift came from Owen, a beautiful leather-bound edition of Emerson's essays that must have cost a small fortune to have shipped from back east. "How did you know Emerson is my favorite?" she asked when she thanked him after the church service. He smiled, that genuine smile that reached his eyes and made the corners crinkle. "You quote him in class. My foreman's daughter repeats everything you say at the dinner table." January brought more snow and bitter winds that rattled the windows of the schoolhouse. Olivia was grateful for the wood stove Owen had installed as a town improvement, though she suspected it was more for her comfort than anything else. She often stayed late, grading papers or preparing lessons in the warmth of the schoolhouse rather than returning to her drafty room at the boarding house. It was during one such evening, with darkness already fallen outside, that the accident occurred. Olivia was reaching for a book on the high shelf when her foot slipped on a patch of melted snow. She fell awkwardly, pain shooting through her ankle as she hit the floor. Attempting to stand proved impossible. Any weight on her right foot sent waves of agony up her leg. Olivia sat back down, considering her options. The schoolhouse was at the edge of town, and in this weather, no one would be passing by. She could try crawling, but the distance to the boarding house seemed insurmountable. As if conjured by her dilemma, the door swung open, bringing with it a gust of cold air and Owen Parker, snow dusting his shoulders. "Miss Vaughn," he called, squinting into the dimly lit room. "Your lamp was still burning, and I thought—" He stopped abruptly, noticing her on the floor. "Are you hurt?" "I fell," she explained, embarrassed. "My ankle, I don't think it's broken, but I can't walk on it." Owen was at her side instantly, kneeling to examine her ankle with gentle hands. "It's swelling already," he observed. "Might be a sprain. We need to get you to the doctor." Before Olivia could protest, he'd scooped her into his arms as effortlessly as if she were one of her students. She instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck for balance. "This isn't necessary," she objected weakly. "I could manage with support." "And risk further injury?" Owen shook his head, already carrying her toward the door. "I think not." He managed to extinguish the lamp and close the schoolhouse door one-handed, never loosening his secure hold on her. Outside, his horse waited patiently, steam rising from its nostrils in the cold air. "I'll need to lift you onto the saddle," Owen warned. "It might hurt." It did hurt, but Olivia bit her lip rather than cry out. Once she was settled, Owen mounted behind her, one arm around her waist to keep her steady as they rode slowly toward town. The doctor confirmed Owen's diagnosis a bad sprain that would require at least a week of rest. He wrapped her ankle tightly and gave her crutches, warning her against putting any weight on the injured foot. "Who will teach the children?" Olivia fretted as Owen helped her back to the boarding house. "The town survived without a teacher before you came," he reminded her gently. "They can manage for a week while you heal." The forced inactivity was maddening. By the third day, Olivia had read every book in her possession twice and was seriously considering attempting to hobble to the schoolhouse despite the doctor's orders. Mrs. Jenkins, seeming to sense her restlessness, assigned her simple tasks like shelling peas or darning socks, work that could be done while seated. On the fourth day, Owen appeared at the boarding house with a crate of books from his personal library. "Thought you might be running out of reading material," he said by way of explanation. Olivia was touched by the thoughtfulness. "Thank you. I was beginning to contemplate reading the dictionary for entertainment." He laughed, setting the crate beside her chair. "These might be more engaging, though I can't promise they're all to your taste. Ranching manuals and military history feature prominently." "I'm not particular at this point," she assured him. Owen hesitated, then asked, "Would you mind some company, unless you prefer solitude for your recovery?" Surprised but pleased, Olivia gestured to the chair opposite hers. Company would be welcome. They spent the afternoon in conversation that ranged from books to cattle breeding to the challenges of teaching multiple grades in one classroom. Owen proved to be well-read, despite his frontier upbringing, with insightful opinions and a dry wit that made Olivia laugh more than she had in months. As dusk fell and Mrs. Jenkins lit the lamps, Owen reluctantly rose to leave. "I've taken enough of your time," he said. "But I enjoyed our conversation." "As did I," Olivia admitted. "Perhaps I could visit again tomorrow," he suggested, a hint of uncertainty in his voice that seemed at odds with his usual confidence. "I'd like that," she said softly. True to his word, Owen returned the next day, and the next, and the next. By the time Olivia's ankle had healed enough to return to teaching, they had established a friendship that surprised them both. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, to the sound of his laugh, to the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Spring arrived with a riot of wildflowers spreading across the plains. Olivia's students grew restless as the weather warmed, their attention wandering to the windows and the freedom that waited outside. She adapted her lessons accordingly, incorporating nature walks and outdoor reading sessions when possible. On one such day in late April, Olivia was supervising her students as they sketched plants for their science lesson when Owen rode up, leading a second horse. "Afternoon, Miss Vaughn," he greeted her, tipping his hat. "I was wondering if you might be free for a ride after school. There's something I'd like to show you." Curious, Olivia agreed. When the children had been dismissed, she changed into a riding skirt kept at the schoolhouse for such occasions and met Owen outside. "It's about 5 miles," he explained as he helped her mount the gentle mare he'd brought. "Not too far, but worth the journey." They rode side by side through rolling grasslands painted with bluebonnets and Indian paintbrush. Owen pointed out landmarks along the way, an old buffalo wallow, the remains of a Comanche campsite, a creek that ran year-round even in drought years. "You love this land," Olivia observed. "It's in my blood," he confirmed. "My father claimed this ranch after fighting with Sam Houston, said there wasn't a prettier piece of Texas to be found." After an hour's ride, they crested a small rise, and Olivia gasped. Before them stretched a hidden valley, its floor carpeted with wildflowers in every imaginable color. A small stream meandered through it, bordered by cottonwood trees just beginning to leaf out. "It's beautiful," she breathed, taking in the scene. "My mother called it God's garden," Owen said, his voice soft with memory. "She used to bring me here when I was a boy." He looked at Olivia, something vulnerable in his expression. "I've never shown anyone else." The significance of his statement wasn't lost on her. Owen was sharing something precious, something personal. It was a gesture of trust that touched her deeply. "Thank you for showing me," she said simply. They dismounted and walked among the flowers, Olivia gathering a small bouquet, while Owen watched with a smile. As the sun began to set, they settled under a cottonwood tree for a simple meal. Owen had packed bread, cheese, dried fruit, and a bottle of wine. "This is hardly proper," Olivia teased as he poured the wine into tin cups. "What would Mrs. Jenkins say?" "That I'm leading the schoolteacher astray, no doubt," Owen chuckled. "Though I suspect she'd forgive me. She's been trying to marry me off for years." "Is that so?" Olivia kept her tone light, though something fluttered in her chest. She's paraded every eligible woman in 3 counties past my dinner table." He took a sip of wine. "None of them interested me much." "And why is that?" Olivia asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Owen looked at her thoughtfully. "I suppose I was waiting for someone who understood that there's more to life than fine dresses and social standing. Someone with courage and conviction. Someone real." The intensity of his gaze made Olivia look away, her cheeks warming. "Those qualities seem basic enough." "You'd be surprised," he said dryly. "Many women see a ranch as a step down from town life. They want to civilize the wilderness rather than appreciate it." "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" Owen was quiet for a long moment. "A partner," he finally said. "Someone to share the good days and weather the bad ones. Someone who sees beauty in this harsh land." He paused, then added softly, "Someone like you, Olivia." It was the first time he had used her given name. The sound of it in his deep voice sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. "Owen," she began, not knowing how to continue. How could she explain that she wasn't whole, wasn't undamaged goods, that her body bore marks she could never erase? He seemed to sense her hesitation. "I'm not asking for anything," he assured her. "Just telling you how I feel. There's no obligation to respond in kind." The ride back to town was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the boarding house, Owen helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for today," Olivia said, looking up at him in the gathering darkness. "My pleasure," he replied, his voice husky. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her, but he stepped back instead. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Owen." Sleep eluded her that night. Olivia tossed and turned, Owen's words playing over in her mind. A part of her yearned to accept what he seemed to be offering: companionship, affection, perhaps even love. Another part recoiled in fear. She hadn't allowed anyone close since Boston, since the attack that had left her scarred both physically and emotionally. The next few weeks brought a tentative dance between them. Owen didn't press the issue he'd raised in the valley, but there was a new awareness in their interactions, a lingering glance, a brush of hands when passing a book, a shared smile across a crowded room. Olivia found herself both drawn to him and frightened by the feelings he evoked. The situation came to a head unexpectedly in mid-May. A group of drunken cowboys passing through town decided to entertain themselves by harassing the schoolteacher as she walked home. They blocked her path, making crude suggestions and reaching for her arm. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Olivia said firmly, trying to step around them. "Ain't no gentleman here, sweetheart," one slurred, grabbing her wrist. "Just men looking for a good time." Panic surged through Olivia, memories of another night, another group of men crowding her. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't helpless. "Remove your hand," she ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The cowboy laughed, tightening his grip. "Or what?" Olivia didn't hesitate. She brought her knee up sharply, catching him in the groin. As he doubled over in pain, she twisted free, only to be grabbed by another man who shoved her roughly against a wall. "Feisty?" he sneered. "I like that." Before he could say more, he was yanked backward and thrown bodily to the ground. Owen stood there, his expression murderous, fists clenched at his sides. "Touch her again," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "and it'll be the last thing you do." The other cowboys, recognizing the danger in his eyes, backed away, dragging their groaning friend with them. Owen didn't relax until they had disappeared around a corner. Only then did he turn to Olivia, concern replacing anger. "Are you hurt?" he asked, eyes searching her face. "No," she assured him, though she was trembling now that the danger had passed. "Just shaken." Without a word, Owen pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly against his chest. Olivia stiffened momentarily, then relaxed, allowing herself the comfort of his embrace. His heartbeat was strong and steady under her ear, his arms secure around her. "I thought," he began, voice rough with emotion. "When I saw him grab you, I thought of losing you, and I couldn't bear it." Olivia pulled back slightly to look up at him, seeing naked fear and something deeper in his eyes. "I'm all right," she whispered. "Olivia," Owen said, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. "I've tried to be patient, to give you time, but I can't pretend anymore. I love you." The words hung between them in the gathering dusk. Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes, emotion overwhelming her carefully constructed defenses. "You don't know what you're saying," she managed. "You don't know what happened to me." "Then tell me," he urged gently. "Whatever it is, it doesn't change how I feel." Olivia took a shuddering breath. "Not here," she said, looking around at the empty street. "Come to the schoolhouse tomorrow after classes. I'll explain then." Owen nodded, reluctantly releasing her. "I'll walk you home," he said, offering his arm. The next day passed in a blur of anticipation and dread. Olivia taught mechanically, her mind elsewhere. When the last student had left, she sat at her desk, hands folded tightly in her lap, waiting. Owen arrived precisely when the schoolhouse clock struck 4. He removed his hat as he entered, setting it on a student's desk before approaching her. There was no pretense between them now. No casual conversation to ease into difficult topics. "Before I say anything else," Olivia began, "I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you changes nothing. I'm not seeking pity or solutions. I simply believe you deserve the truth." Owen nodded, taking a seat opposite her. "I'm listening." Olivia drew a deep breath. "Before I came west, I taught at a girls' school in Boston. I was engaged to a man named Charles Winthrop from a prominent family." The name still tasted bitter on her tongue. "I thought he loved me. I was naive." Owen remained silent, his eyes never leaving her face. One night, after a dinner at his family's home, Charles suggested we take a different route back to my boarding house. It was dark, and I should have known better, but I trusted him. Olivia's voice faltered. "He led me to a warehouse by the docks. His friends were waiting." Understanding dawned in Owen's eyes, followed by a flash of rage quickly suppressed. "Olivia!" She held up a hand, needing to finish. There were 4 of them. They'd been drinking. They They took turns. The words came out flat, emotionless, as if she were describing something that had happened to someone else. When I fought back, they used knives, heated coins, whatever came to hand. They wanted to mark me, to make sure I would never forget. Owen's hands had clenched into fists on his knees, knuckles white with strain. A night watchman heard my screams eventually, Olivia continued. He saved my life, though for a long time, I wasn't sure I wanted it saved. The men were arrested, but Charles's family had influence. The charges were dismissed. The story was buried. I was advised to leave Boston for my own good. Silence filled the schoolhouse when she finished. Olivia watched Owen's face, waiting for the disgust or pity she dreaded. Instead, he asked quietly, "May I see?" The request stunned her. "What?" "Your scars," Owen clarified. "May I see them?" Panic rose in Olivia's throat. "Why would you want to?" "Because they're part of you," he said simply. "And I love all of you." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. No one had ever asked to see her scars, not the doctors who'd treated her, not the landlady who'd sometimes helped her change bandages. Everyone had averted their eyes, as if her damaged skin might somehow contaminate them. "You don't have to," Owen added gently. "I'm just asking if you trust me enough to show me." Trust. Such a simple word for such a monumental act. Did she trust him? This man who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect for months. Slowly, Olivia stood and moved to the door, locking it securely. She returned to stand before Owen, her hands trembling as she began unbuttoning the high collar of her blouse. "Stop me if this becomes too much," she whispered. Owen nodded, his eyes never leaving hers until she slipped the blouse from her shoulders. She wore only a thin chemise underneath, the fabric doing little to hide the lattice of scars across her collarbones and upper chest. With shaking fingers, she pushed the straps down, allowing the garment to fall to her waist. Olivia closed her eyes, unable to watch his reaction. She heard his sharp intake of breath, then the scrape of his chair as he stood. His footsteps approached, and she braced herself for rejection. Instead, she felt the feather-light touch of his fingers tracing the longest scar, the one that curved from her left shoulder across her collarbone. His touch was reverent, almost tender, as he mapped each mark on her skin. "Open your eyes, Olivia," he murmured. She did, finding him much closer than expected, his face mere inches from hers. There was no disgust in his expression, no pity, only a fierce protectiveness and something deeper, something that made her breath catch. "You're still beautiful to me," Owen said, his voice rough with emotion. His fingers continued their gentle exploration, tracing a burned scar on her right shoulder. "Each of these marks is a testament to your courage, to your strength." Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. "I'm damaged," she whispered. "No," Owen said firmly. "You're a survivor." He raised her hand to his shirt, placing it over his heart. "We all carry scars, Olivia. Some are just more visible than others." He unbuttoned his own shirt, revealing a puckered bullet wound just below his left collarbone. "Gettysburg," he explained. "The doctor said I should have died." He guided her fingers to a long, jagged scar across his ribs. "Comanche raid, 10 years ago. They left me for dead." Olivia traced the scars with the same gentleness he had shown hers. His skin was warm beneath her fingers, sprinkled with dark hair that tapered down his flat stomach. "The difference," she said softly, "is that your scars are badges of honor, mine are marks of shame." "There is no shame in surviving," Owen countered, tilting her chin up to meet his gaze. "The men who did this to you, they're the ones who should bear the shame, not you, never you." He bent slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, and pressed his lips to the scar that crossed her collarbone. The touch was so gentle, so reverent, that fresh tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "Beautiful," Owen murmured against her skin, moving to place another kiss on her shoulder. "Strong?" Another kiss, this time at the hollow of her throat. "Brave." A final kiss, this one brushing the corner of her mouth. "Beloved." Olivia's arms went around his neck, pulling him closer as their lips finally met in a kiss that felt like coming home. Owen's hand settled at her waist, steadying her as she swayed toward him, his touch respectful even in passion. When they finally parted, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Olivia Vaughn," he said simply, scars and all. "I think I've loved you since that day in the blizzard, when you insisted on searching for those children despite the danger." "I think I've loved you just as long," she admitted. "I was just too afraid to acknowledge it." "And now?" he asked, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. Olivia smiled, feeling truly free for the first time in years. "Now, I'm still afraid," she confessed. "But I'm tired of letting fear dictate my life." Owen gathered her close, his heartbeat strong and steady against her cheek. "We'll take it slowly," he promised. "One day at a time. But I want you to know that whenever you're ready, I want to make a life with you." They remained in each other's arms as the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the schoolhouse windows. For the first time since that terrible night in Boston, Olivia felt not broken, but healing, not damaged, but simply scarred, bearing the marks of a battle she had survived. The following weeks brought a cautious courtship, conducted largely in public church socials, walks through town, occasional chaperoned rides into the countryside. Owen was unfailingly patient, never pushing for more physical intimacy than Olivia was comfortable with, though their kisses grew increasingly passionate when they found moments alone. Gossip spread through Redemption Creek like wildfire. The wealthy rancher and the schoolteacher were courting. Some approved, noting that Olivia's Eastern education made her a suitable match despite her lack of fortune. Others wondered what Owen Parker saw in the reserved, somewhat mysterious woman who kept herself covered even in the summer heat. Mrs. Jenkins was openly delighted, telling anyone who would listen that she'd predicted the match from the start. "Never seen a man so smitten," she declared over tea with the church ladies. "Brings her wildflowers every week, reads poetry on her porch of an evening. It's enough to restore your faith in romance." By midsummer, Owen had taken to inviting Olivia to his ranch on Saturdays. Mrs. Jenkins, acting as chaperone, would accompany them, but tactfully find reasons to busy herself in the kitchen or garden, giving them some privacy while maintaining propriety. On one such visit, with the July sun blazing overhead, Owen suggested a swim in the creek that ran through his property. "The water's cool and clean," he promised. "And there's a bend where it forms a deep pool, perfect for swimming." Olivia hesitated, thinking of her scars, visible in the lightweight summer dress she wore, but far more exposed in swimming attire. Owen, reading her thoughts as he often seemed able to do, added quietly, "There's no one for miles, just us." The idea was tempting. The heat was oppressive, and the thought of cool water against her skin was almost irresistible. Still, she wavered. "You don't have to decide now," Owen said, squeezing her hand gently. "The creek isn't going anywhere." His patient understanding decided her. "No," Olivia said firmly. "I want to swim. I'm tired of letting fear dictate what I can and cannot do." They rode to the creek on horseback, following its winding course to where it widened and deepened beneath a canopy of cottonwood trees. The spot was beautiful, secluded and serene, with wildflowers dotting the banks and dragonflies skimming the water's surface. "It's perfect," Olivia breathed, dismounting with Owen's help. He smiled, pleased by her reaction. "My father built that rope swing," he said, pointing to a thick rope hanging from a sturdy branch that extended over the deepest part of the pool. "I spent half my childhood in this water." Owen turned his back politely, while Olivia removed her outer clothing, leaving only her chemise and drawers. She hesitated at the water's edge, suddenly self-conscious despite his assurances of privacy. "I won't look until you're ready," Owen called from where he stood with his back to her, having stripped down to his undergarments as well. Taking a deep breath, Olivia waded into the creek. The water was cool and clear, instantly soothing against her sun-warmed skin. She moved deeper until the water reached her shoulders. "You can turn around now," she called. Owen did, his appreciative gaze taking in her wet hair and flushed cheeks, before he waded in to join her. They swam lazily in the deep pool, occasionally splashing each other like children. Olivia couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so carefree, so uninhibited. After a while, Owen swam to the rope swing and pulled himself up onto the bank. "Watch this," he called with boyish enthusiasm before swinging out over the water and letting go with a whoop of joy. He surfaced, grinning, and Olivia laughed at his antics. "Very impressive," she teased. "Your turn," he challenged, swimming the rope back to the bank. "I couldn't possibly—" "Of course you can," Owen encouraged. "I'll be right here if you need me." To her own surprise, Olivia found herself climbing out of the water and taking the rope in her hands. Owen positioned her feet correctly and showed her how to hold on. "Ready?" he asked. Olivia nodded, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. She pushed off from the bank, the momentum carrying her out over the deep water. For a moment, she was flying, suspended between earth and sky, completely free. Then she let go. Plunging into the cool embrace of the creek, she surfaced to find Owen watching her with undisguised admiration. "Beautiful," he said softly, swimming closer. Olivia was suddenly aware of how transparent her wet chemise had become, clinging to her body and revealing every scar, every imperfection. But for once, she didn't try to hide. There was something liberating about being truly seen, without judgment or pity. Owen seemed to sense the significance of the moment. He moved closer, his hands finding her waist beneath the water. "May I kiss you, Olivia?" he asked, his voice husky. In answer, she wound her arms around his neck, pulling him close until their lips met. The kiss was different from their previous ones, deeper, more urgent, with nothing to constrain them but their own boundaries. Owen's hands stayed respectfully at her waist, though she could feel the tension in his body, the restraint he was exercising. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "More than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," Olivia replied, the words coming easily now, without fear or hesitation. They remained in the creek until the sun began to lower in the sky, then reluctantly returned to shore. Owen again turned his back while Olivia dressed, though she found herself less concerned with hiding her body than before. As they rode back to the ranch house, Owen took her hand. "I have something I want to ask you," he said, "but I want to do it properly. Will you have dinner with me tomorrow evening? Just the two of us?" Olivia nodded, a flutter of anticipation in her chest. "I'd like that." The next evening, Owen arrived at the boarding house in his best suit, his hair still damp from washing. He carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, which he presented to Olivia with a bow that made her laugh. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warm as he took in her appearance. She wore her best dress, a deep blue that brought out the color of her eyes, and had arranged her hair in loose curls that framed her face. He escorted her to his buckboard, helping her up before climbing in beside her. Rather than heading toward town, however, he turned the horses toward his ranch. "Are we not dining in town?" Olivia asked, curious. "I thought we might enjoy more privacy at the ranch," Owen explained. "I've asked my housekeeper to prepare a special meal, after which she will discreetly absent herself." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspiciously like you've planned something, Mr. Parker." His smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps I have, Miss Vaughn." The ranch house was transformed when they arrived. Lanterns illuminated the wide porch, and through the windows Olivia could see more lanterns and candles inside, casting a warm golden glow. The table in the dining room was set with fine china and crystal that must have been brought west at great expense and trouble. Mrs. Hernandez, Owen's housekeeper, served them a meal far more sophisticated than typical ranch fare: roast duck with cherry sauce, fresh vegetables from the kitchen garden, and a light, sweet custard for dessert. Throughout the meal, Owen was attentive and charming, keeping the conversation flowing easily, though Olivia noticed an underlying nervousness in his manner. When they had finished eating and Mrs. Hernandez had cleared the dishes and departed for her cottage behind the main house, Owen rose and extended his hand to Olivia. "Would you care to see the stars?" he asked. "The night is clear, and the view from the porch is exceptional." They stepped outside into the velvet darkness. The night was warm, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. Above them, the sky was a canopy of stars, more brilliant than any Olivia had seen in Boston. "It's magnificent," she breathed, gazing upward. "Yes, it is," Owen agreed, though when she glanced at him, he was looking at her, not the stars. He took both her hands in his. "Olivia, these past months have been the happiest of my life." Her heart began to race. "Mine too," she admitted softly. Owen took a deep breath, then dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. I had a speech prepared, he said with a self-deprecating smile, but I find now that simple truth serves better than flowery words. I love you. I want to spend my life with you, sharing joys, facing hardships, building something lasting together. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. Olivia Vaughn, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? He opened the box to reveal a ring, not an ostentatious diamond like Charles had given her, but a delicate band of gold set with a single pearl, surrounded by tiny sapphires that caught the starlight. It was my mother's, Owen explained. My father gave it to her when they decided to make their life here. He said the pearl represented how precious she was to him, and the sapphires were for the Texas sky they would live under together. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she looked from the ring to the man kneeling before her. This good, patient man who had never pushed her, never demanded, never seen her as anything less than whole despite her scars. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, Owen Parker, I will marry you. Joy transformed his face as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Owen rose and pulled her into his arms, his kiss passionate yet tender, a promise of the life they would build together. They were married in October, when the heat of summer had given way to the golden warmth of autumn. The ceremony was held in the small church in Redemption Creek, filled to capacity with townsfolk, ranch hands, and students past and present. Olivia wore a gown of ivory satin with a high collar and long sleeves not to hide her scars, as she once might have done, but because the design was elegant and suited her. Owen waited for her at the altar, his face lighting up when she appeared at the church door. As she walked toward him on the arm of the town mayor, who had happily agreed to give her away, Olivia felt a profound sense of rightness, of coming home. Their vows were simple and heartfelt. When Owen slipped the gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, his eyes never leaving hers. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was both a culmination and a beginning. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and lanterns hanging from the trees. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and congratulations from everyone in attendance. Through it all, Owen kept Olivia close, his hand at her waist or holding hers, as if he couldn't bear to let her go. As the evening progressed, he leaned down to whisper in her ear, "Are you happy, Mrs. Parker?" The her new name brought a fresh wave of joy. "Completely," she assured him. "And you?" "More than I ever thought possible," he replied, his eyes reflecting the starlight above them. Later, when the last guests had departed and they were finally alone, Olivia found herself nervous, despite months of gradually increasing intimacy. Owen seemed to sense her apprehension. "We have all the time in the world," he assured her, taking her hands gently. "Nothing needs to happen that you're not ready for." His understanding nearly undid her. "It's not that I don't want to," Olivia explained, her cheeks warming. "It's just, no one has seen all of me since—" "I understand," Owen said softly, "and whatever you're comfortable with tonight is enough for me." His patience gave her courage. In the privacy of their bedroom, lit only by a single lamp, Olivia slowly removed her wedding gown, then the undergarments beneath, until she stood before her husband completely bare, every scar visible in the golden light. Owen's gaze was reverent as it traveled over her body. He stepped forward, still fully clothed, and began to trace each mark with gentle fingers, just as he had the first time in the schoolhouse. Only now there was no hesitation, no uncertainty between them. "You're still beautiful to me," he murmured, bending to place a kiss on the scar that crossed her collarbone. "You will always be beautiful to me." Olivia reached up to begin unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers steady now. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me how much you love me." That night, in Owen's arms, Olivia learned that physical love could be gentle, tender, and healing. His touch was respectful, yet passionate, his eyes never leaving hers as they moved together in the ancient rhythm of lovers. When pleasure overtook her, unexpected in its intensity, he held her close, whispering words of love and reassurance. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms with her head pillowed on his chest, Olivia felt a profound sense of peace. The scars would always be there, both the visible ones on her skin and the invisible ones on her heart, but they no longer defined her. They were simply part of her story, a story that was still being written, with chapters of joy and love yet to come. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked softly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Olivia smiled, pressing a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "That for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of the future. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." "Together," he agreed, tightening his arms around her. "Always." Life on the ranch settled into a rhythm that suited them both. Olivia continued teaching, riding to town each morning and returning home each afternoon. The children were delighted by her marriage, especially when Owen occasionally came to school to help with special projects or to teach them about ranching and animal husbandry. Their evenings were spent together, reading by the fire, discussing the day's events, or simply enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. At night, they explored each other with increasing confidence and passion. Olivia no longer shy about her body or her desires. By springtime, Olivia had news to share. She waited until they were riding together on a Sunday afternoon, the wildflowers once again carpeting the rolling hills in a riot of color. "I think we should add a room to the house," she said casually as they paused to let their horses drink from a stream. Owen looked at her curiously. "A room? What kind of room?" Olivia smiled, her hand unconsciously moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "A nursery," she said softly, "for the baby who will join us in early winter." The joy that transformed Owen's face was worth the weeks she'd kept her suspicions to herself, waiting until she was certain. He was off his horse in an instant, lifting her from her saddle and spinning her around, his laughter echoing across the plains. "A baby," he said in wonder, setting her gently on her feet and dropping to his knees to press a reverent kiss to her stomach. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Olivia asked, though the answer was written clearly across his face. Owen stood, framing her face with his hands. "You have given me everything I ever wanted," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "A wife I adore, a home filled with love, and now a child. How could I be anything but deliriously happy?" The months of pregnancy brought changes to Olivia's body, not just the growing roundness of her belly, but new marks on her skin as it stretched to accommodate their child. She watched these new lines appear with fascination rather than dismay. "More scars to add to my collection," she remarked one evening as Owen's hand caressed her bare stomach, feeling the strong kicks of their active baby. "The most beautiful scars of all," he replied, bending to press a kiss to a particularly prominent stretch mark. Marks of creation rather than destruction. Their son was born on a cold December night, with snow falling gently outside the windows. After hours of labor, with Owen by her side despite the doctor's initial protests, Thomas Henry Parker entered the world with a lusty cry that made both his parents laugh through tears of joy. "He's perfect," Owen whispered, cradling his son with hands that suddenly seemed too large, too rough for such a tiny being. "Of course he is," Olivia agreed tiredly, her face glowing despite her exhaustion. "He's ours." Life changed with Thomas's arrival. Nights interrupted by his hungry cries, days structured around his needs, the house filled with baby things, and the sounds of his coos and gurgles. Owen proved to be a devoted father, as comfortable changing diapers as he was managing ranch hands. Olivia took a sabbatical from teaching that first year, unwilling to miss a moment of her son's development. On warm afternoons, she would sit with Thomas on a blanket beneath the cottonwood trees, reading to him or simply watching him discover the world around him, his tiny hands reaching for sunbeams, his eyes wide with wonder at the sight of a butterfly. Owen often found them there when he returned from working with the cattle, dropping to his knees beside them with a smile that never failed to warm Olivia's heart. "My family," he would say, gathering them both into his arms. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler to little boy, the ranch grew as well. Owen's innovative breeding techniques and fair business practices brought prosperity, allowing them to expand their operations and improve the main house. They added not just the nursery, but a proper library filled with books from east and west, a larger kitchen where Olivia experimented with recipes, and a wide veranda where they could sit in the evenings, watching the sun set over land that would one day belong to their son. When Thomas was 3, they welcomed a daughter, Catherine Grace, named for both their mothers. She was as dark as Thomas was fair, with Owen's blue eyes and Olivia's determined chin. From the moment she could crawl, she followed her brother everywhere, and he appointed himself her protector with all the seriousness a 4-year-old could muster. On the children's birthdays and at Christmas, neighbors and friends gathered at the Parker Ranch for celebrations that became legendary in the county. Olivia, once so private and withdrawn, discovered a talent for hospitality, creating traditions that brought their community together. As the years passed, the scars on Olivia's body faded, never disappearing completely, but becoming less angry, less prominent. The scars on her heart healed even more thoroughly, surrounded as she was by love and acceptance. On their 10th anniversary, Owen surprised her with a trip to the Hidden Valley, where he had first shared his mother's special place with her. They rode out alone, leaving the children in Mrs. Hernandez's capable hands, and picnicked among wildflowers that seemed even more abundant than before. "Are you happy?" Owen asked, echoing the question he'd asked so many times over the years. Olivia looked at him, at the silver now threaded through his dark hair, the laugh lines around his eyes deeper than they had been, the strong hands that had held her through nightmares and childbirth and everyday joys. "Completely," she assured him, reaching out to trace the scar on his cheek where a stray branch had caught him during a cattle drive the previous year. "Are you?" "More than I ever thought possible," he replied, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "Though I wouldn't mind a few more children." Olivia laughed, leaning in to kiss him properly. "Perhaps we should start working on that tonight," she suggested, her eyes sparkling with mischief and promise. Later, as they lay together on the blanket he'd brought, clothes disheveled from lovemaking that had grown more passionate rather than less over the years, Owen traced the faint line across her collarbone, the first scar he had ever kissed. "You're still beautiful to me," he murmured, his voice husky with emotion. "You grow more beautiful every day." Olivia smiled, pulling him down for another kiss. The past with its pain was just that past. What mattered was this moment, this man, the life they had built together, and the future stretching before them as vast and promising as the Texas sky above. Their life wasn't perfect. There would be droughts and floods, illnesses and injuries, arguments and reconciliations in the years to come. But it was real, and it was theirs, and it was more than either had dared to dream possible when a scarred woman stepped off a stagecoach in a small Texas town, and a lonely rancher tipped his hat in greeting. For Olivia, who had once believed herself too damaged for happiness, that was more than enough. It was everything.